that's what we're going to continue looking at today, these foundational principles, if you will. And we're learning to recession-proof our finances. We're learning to recession-proof our life, but more so, we're learning to be obedient to God with our finances, but with our entire lives. And you're going to hear me say this multiple times today, that all of these principles, all the ones that we've taught, they apply to all areas of life, not just where your finances are concerned. And I had started this series with a joke every week, and I'm not going to do that this week. I'm sorry, I don't have one. I'll just repeat one that I said maybe last week or week before, that there is a fine line between a long sermon and a hostage situation. And so my promise to you is they're going to be very, very short today. I'm going to try to be shorter than usual, believe it or not. So, some of you doubt that. Or is that, no, you want, okay, I get it. You know what he's saying, right? Bring it. Come on. Bring it. New money. All right. Let's do it then. Let's do it. Because we're talking here about, we're in the second week of the principles of sowing and reaping. And I told my friend Mark we're going to do some more farming this week. And farming was used as an analogy because throughout the Bible, because it was a primary way of earning an income, whether you farm crops or cattle or whatever, sheep, whatever. And so we covered this in an overview back in November in a series called What Good Is My Giving, when we talked about the promises of God, the conditional promises when we give and we're generous of our money. But we're looking at it in a deeper way in this series. We're looking at it where our finances are concerned overall. And we dove into this series because it's what you wanted. It's what you asked for, because it's tough out there, isn't it? It's hard. Some of us, and even for us, it has been difficult to have the ends meet. And so we're just really pressing in and leaning in and trusting God. And so that is why we need this Financially Fit series. And so let's continue. We've talked a lot and used a lot of the scripture from Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, but we've also dove into about 14 other books of the Bible, and we're going to continue in that today. I'm going to start with the same verse that I started last week, and that is Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 18. And I began by saying this about Proverbs. A lot of people think that Proverbs is a proverb is a promise, and it is when there's a call to action. Okay, when God says, okay, if you do this, then this will happen. Okay, that's a promise. Okay, but Proverbs within themselves are just wise sayings that we need to adhere to. And this has a wise saying in it, but it also has a promise in it. So let's look at it. Verse 18, it's on your screen, it's on your outline. It says, a wicked person earns deceptive wages, but the one who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. Now, this is an example of the principle of sowing and reaping, just one that's found in the book of Proverbs and across the Old and New Testament. And this does come with a conditional promise. If you look in the second part here, it says, the one who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. All right, conditional promise, like I said. If you will, underline or circle those words on your outline, sows and reaps. I asked you to do that last week, but what he's talking about is sowing and reaping where your income is concerned. The wisest man on earth, Solomon, starts out by saying, okay, a wicked person earns deceptive wages. And certainly that's true. All right, but then he says too, there's honest ways with benefits of earning wages, okay? So if you embrace the honest things in life, if you embrace the honest ways, you will benefit. You'll reap a sure reward, is what he's saying here. And again, this is a farming analogy, so I'm going to use a little farming language, if you will. But more so, I want us to understand this, okay? I want to reemphasize this, that these principles apply to many, many areas of your life. Not just where your money is concerned, not just where your finances are concerned, but in all areas of your life. But we just are pressing down and leaning into and talking about arranging our finances the way that God desires for us to. What I want to do is this. In sowing and reaping, there are 9 principles. All right, I gave you 5 of them last week. I want to go over those really quickly and then give you the 4 for this week to wrap up this principle, okay, or these principles. The very first principle I said is everything starts with a seed. Everything starts with an idea. Everything starts with a thought, a dream even. Where your spouse is concerned, all right? You had an idea. You had a dream that maybe this person was the person, okay? Somebody had a dream that there could be a better way, a better mode of transportation, and invented the car, the automobile. Who was that? Does anybody know? Last night crowd got it right. Was it Henry Ford? Carl Benz of Mercedes-Benz fame. He invented the car. Henry Ford invented the mass production of the automobile. And but every idea, everything, this building started with an idea, okay? The high-rise across the street started with a dream that somebody had to serve the aging in our community. And I said last week that God created this world, this earth, around what could be called the seed principle. And that's really what we're talking about. And you find that in Genesis chapter 1, verse 11. The second principle is this, is nothing happens until a seed is planted. I have to go to work, okay? Whatever it is we need to do with our finances, where they're concerned, now's the time to do it. We don't wait. Whether that's sit down and make a 10-10-80 plan for your budget. That's a budget plan that we covered the second week in this series. Whether it's to submit resumes if you need a job or if you need multiple jobs, okay? Whether it's use one of the get out of debt plans that I gave you from the Dave Ramsey site. Whatever it is, now is the time to do it, okay? Let me just talk for a minute about the Dave Ramsey plan because I was challenged on it, okay? Dave gives us what's called the snowball method of paying down debt. It's one of the debt reduction plans that he has on his website. And there's a little bit of controversy, but the snowball method is this. It's one in which folks pay down the smallest debt first and then make only the minimum payments on all the other outstanding debts. So it came up with this, is that this method, it could end up costing you more in interest and take you longer to clear your debt compared to cracking down on those debts that have the highest interest rate. And that is true. That is very true. I can agree with that, okay? And I'm not refuting what Dave Ramsey says. Dave Ramsey has helped thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not million plus people get out of debt and right their finances, okay? But Dave says this, and I've listened to him for years. In fact, some of the material that I'm using comes from him. But he says this, I don't care if paying down the highest interest debt first is cheapest. Because if you give up midway, that's more expensive. And he's right. And he's right. I've listened to him enough to know that if you pay off the smaller debts first, it seems a little bit easier to do that. And as you do that, you do it quickly, or you do it quicker, I should say, it creates momentum, all right? It's encouraging to you. It shows that you're making forward progress. So I understand what he's saying. Here is what Renee and I did when we were in massive debt. We just drove a stake and made a commitment and started whittling it away. And we said that we are not going to move from this. We are going to see this through, and we're going to get out of debt. And I think that is really the key. And that's what Dave is saying here, okay? So regardless, just get started. Yes, I agree. Paying down the higher interest rates first can save you more money. The only way you're going to know how much that is to do some simple math, okay? But I would just encourage you, make a commitment and stick with it to get out of debt, all right? The third thing that we covered last week, the third principle is, whatever I sow is what I reap. Whatever I sow is whatever I reap. Galatians 6 says, a man sows what he reaps. He does, or he reaps what he sows. I'm saying that backwards, I'm sorry. But this is the law of reproduction, if you will. Whatever you plant, you're going to get it back. A farmer, he never questions this. There's not a doubt in his mind. If he plants corn or grain, he's going to get corn or grain. All right? He's not going to plant corn and get cucumbers. That doesn't happen, okay? But this applies to every single area of our lives, including our finances. If you save money, you're going to earn interest. You're going to get more money back. If you invest and you do it with righteousness, like Proverbs says, you know what? You're going to reap a harvest. You will reap exactly what you plant in life. And look, that can be positively or negatively. The fourth principle was this, and I said this might surprise you, and listen listen in the direction that I go here with this. I'm not the only sower, all right? You're reaping the consequences of the generations that came before you. You are. I gave you the example of our national debt. We just reached well over $34 trillion in debt. And I said this, if something does not change, our great-great-grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be paying that debt that we've accumulated, that we helped accumulate, okay? But some of us grew up in generational sin. We did. There's never been a single first-generation addict. We grew up with physical, emotional, and I hate to say this, even sexual abuse in some cases. We did. But today, what we have to start doing is we have to plant new and different seeds. And we got to drive a stake and say, hey, I'm going to create a new legacy. I'm doing something different for my children and my grandchildren. We're going to stop this today. My point is this, is that everything, every single decision, everything that we do has consequences. And not just for us, okay? Not just for you, but for your family and the next generation, okay? Your life affects others. We can't make that dumb statement that, hey, this is my life and I'll do what I want with it. No, you're a part of the human race. And whether it affects your immediate family, it affects other people in society. It does. It does. Every single time. Today we have to drive a stake where our finances are concerned. I would encourage you to embrace these principles. Teach your children while they're young this 10-10-80 budget plan, okay? But you have to do it first. And if you do this, I guarantee you, they won't have to struggle with their finances when they get out on their own. They won't. They won't have to live from paycheck to paycheck. Not that it won't be a struggle at times, but it'll be a whole lot easier. It's always easier doing things God's way. It just is. The fifth principle was this. I always sow in a different season, or I always reap in a different season. I'm going to get sowing and reaping right here in a minute. Y'all just hang with me, okay? I always reap in a different season than I sow. I do. There's always a delay in harvest. Always, there is. There's no such thing as a quick fix. Let's just drill down to it. That's the point here, okay? Don't allow yourself to get involved in quick, get-rich-quick schemes. They don't work. You know, one in ever how many billions of times somebody hit the lottery. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. But two, don't give up. Don't give up in this process, okay? Don't give up on God where these principles are concerned. Don't quit before the miracle happens. And again, commit. Commit to doing this. And just know that when you plant a seed or multiple seeds, they will burst forth and they will begin growing. They will. And the payoff will be a little bit down the road. It's not going to happen up front. There's a season for planting and then there's a season for harvesting. And we learned that in Ecclesiastes last week. There's a time and place for everything under the sun. Here's where I want to start this week with number 6. And this is your first fill-in on your outline. And I hope you're please taking notes because this is so important. I always reap more than I sow. I always reap more than I sow. And this is true for good and for bad. You sow bad, you get bad back. You sow good, you get good back. All right? This is the principle of multiplication, if you will. We hit on this in the principle of compensation in the parable of the talents a few weeks back. If I take one kernel of corn and I put it in the ground, I don't get just one kernel back. I get a stalk that has multiple ears on it, okay? And I get hundreds, if not thousands of kernels back, okay? This is the exponential potential of the seed that we plant, all right? You always get more out of it than you put into it. You will. You may not reap more financially, okay? But you will reap more in satisfaction and joy and peace. Because you're always going to reap more than you sow, depending on how you sow, okay? In the parable of the soil, Jesus points this out. He makes it very clear. And this is in Mark chapter 4, verse 8. Still other seed fell on good soil. The crop came up, it grew, it produced a crop, and some multiplied 30, 60, even 100 times, all right? He's saying here that you're going to produce an increase if you're wise with your money. You are. But not all of it will, but some of it will, okay? And it may not be 100-fold. It may not be 30-fold, all right? It just depends. The more you plant, the greater the possibility. This is true in everything. This is one of the reasons that I don't respond to critics publicly, okay? I'll sit down and have a conversation with somebody in private, but I just don't respond to critics publicly. I just don't, okay? I don't want to, because I don't want to get caught up in that chain reaction that happens when you do that. You know, they reply, you reply, it just keeps going back and forth. It's never ending, okay? Because I don't want to get back negativity, because you always reap what you sow. You do. You know what I want to do? I want to be that person that sows love. I want to be that person who prays for that individual. Okay? I want to be that person, and Jesus tells us to do this. He tells us to pray for those who persecute you, to bless those who curse you, to love your enemies. Why? Because that's exactly what I want back. I want love back, okay? I want blessings back, all right? And this works negatively and positively for your finances as well. It does. You sow biblically, financially speaking, you're exponentially, potentially going to get more than you sow with everything in life. You just are. And if you use these principles and you sow correctly, it's going to be to your benefit every single time. Every single time. I believe that. Like I said, it may not be 30, 60, 100-fold, but you're going to invest. If you invest properly, there's going to be a payoff. All right? If you save properly, there's going to be a payoff. There is. The next principle is this, is I can increase my harvest by planting more seed. I can increase my harvest by planting more seed. We always reap in proportion to what we sow in life. You know, if I sow a bunch of seed, I'm going to get a bunch of crop. If I sow a little bit of seed, I'm going to get a little bit of crop. If I sow nothing, I'm going to get nothing. I'm going to get nothing. This is true in giving. It's true in tithing. This is true in investing. It's true in saving. It's true where your time is concerned. And like I said, many, many other areas of your life. I can increase my harvest, though, by planting more. The more I plant, the more I get. Okay? Paul made this clear to the Corinthians. And I want you to follow me here, okay? Because just look at verse 9, 2 Corinthians, verse 9. It's on your outline. It's also on the screen here. Starting in verse 6, he says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will reap sparingly. And whoever sows generously will reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. All right, follow me here closely, all right? Because I'm going to make a point about the delay in harvest, as well as harvesting more as I am more generous, okay? This particular passage, it happens to be talking about the giving of money as a seed, yes. But it's more than just about giving money, okay? But that's what Paul's referencing here, just being totally upfront with you here. But it's basically saying this. I want you to get this. You cannot outgive God in any situation. You turn your finances over to God and you begin to save and invest, God's going to bless that. He is. He is. I've told you before this in the vein of God loves a cheerful giver. Okay, maybe you want to underline that on your outline. The Greek word for cheerful there is where we get the word hilarious. And why do I point this out? Because God is looking at and He loves the heart attitude where your finances are concerned. That's what He's looking at. God doesn't need your money. He doesn't want your money. Okay? He wants what your money represents. Your heart, your attitude, your trust in Him. I told you before, Jesus talked more about money and possessions than He did heaven or hell. Why? Because He knew it would consume our thoughts. Money would consume our thoughts a lot more than heaven and hell. It would. Let's talk about the delay in the harvest. Some of us have given up on God and His principles because we haven't reaped rewards. We haven't reaped His blessings and His benefits. We haven't seen them because we quit too soon. I mean, when there are delays in God's benefits and blessings where your giving is concerned, we have to look at our attitude and our heart. Do we want to be obedient to God where this is concerned? Are you trusting of Him? Because that's what He's looking at. It is. Are we trusting Him that He's going to change? He's going to change things in our lives. He's going to change the direction and the path and recession-proof our lives, financially speaking. Is He? That's what He's looking at. He's looking at our motives. Are we doing it just because we want something from God? You remember I talked about the vending machine mentality where God's concerned? God's not a vending machine, okay? We serve Him. He doesn't serve us. He doesn't. He wants us to have a cheerful heart. He wants us to come expecting that He's going to take care of us. Here it is, Lord. Here's everything. Here's everything. I'm trusting You today. I can't see the ground in front of me, but I'm going to take the next step. And I know you're going to be there because you were there just a little bit ago. And I know you'll be there when I take the next step. Let's talk about the increasing of the harvest. What's a seed? What's a seed? If I can plant more seed and get more harvest, what's a seed? A seed is anything that I value and I give it away. That's what Scripture is teaching us here. If I give wisdom away, you know what? I'm going to become wiser. Read Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Read the story of Solomon. All right? If I give my time away, I'm going to get more back. If I give my money away, God's going to make sure that my needs are met. If I give it to the right place. If I save, if I invest, if I give back to Him by bringing of my first fruits. All right? Whatever you need more of, give it away. And I know what you're thinking here, but I don't have enough. I don't. Well, start giving some of it away. Maybe you can't save 10% and you can't give 10%. Start with 2% or 3%. That's where we had to start. We did. Start giving. Start serving unselfishly and cheerfully. Cheerfully. Where you don't have enough. In any area of your life where you don't have enough. Time. Come here today and hook up with Amber and start mentoring a younger person. If that is the desire of your heart, you know what's going to happen? If you don't have time, God's going to rearrange your priorities in life and you're going to have more time to spend mentoring a young person in our church. It's just going to happen. I've seen it. For 30 years I've seen it, okay? A seed is anything that I sow that I give away, that I let go of instead of holding on to it myself. Everything I hold on to does nothing. I got a barn full of stuff I'd love for you to show. I'd love to show you. You can come to cook out with the pastor next week and I'll take you down there and show it to you. It's a barn full of stuff that's just sitting there. And you know what? It's doing nothing. I need to give it away to somebody who can use it. It's what I need to do. But a seed is that thing that I give away instead of holding on to it. This is the law of generosity is what I'm talking about. Jesus gave us this in Matthew when He's talking to the Pharisees about their tithing. They were good and boastful about their tithing. They were good about that. Oh, I give. And every time somebody boasts to me about their giving, don't do that, okay? Well, let me tell you this. This law of generosity, it works for everybody. It works for unbelievers. It does. How many of you know wealthy businessmen and women who are not believers in Jesus? We all do. We all do. Let me just throw a name out here that probably all of us recognize. Elon Musk. He says he is not a religious man, and if he has a religion, it is that of curiosity. It is what drove him into space exploration. But here's the deal. Look at this. He has donated $10 million to Brownsville, Texas for revitalization of the city. He gave another $20 million to the schools there. And get this. He also donated $5.74 billion of shares in his company. Just gave it away and said, here you go. I happen to believe this is why he continues to make money hands over fist, okay? And here's the bottom line. You run your business with integrity and generosity and humility and the laws of the harvest, you're going to be blessed and you're going to benefit. You just are. You just are. The law of gravity just doesn't work for Christians. It works for everybody. It does. And these principles of sowing and reaping, the laws of harvest, the laws of generosity works for everybody, whether they're a believer or not. They just do. It's the same with the principles of forgiveness. The process of forgiveness works for every single person alive on this earth. It does. We see this in all the self-help books that mention nothing about God. They do. You know what's astonishing to me? Rich people, whether they're believers or not, they understand this law. They understand this principle. They understand being generous. Sometimes I question Christians because we struggle with it. We struggle with our finances. Because every time a pastor stands up and talks about money, whether it's giving or whether it's about finances, there's tension in the room. There is. But it's astonishing to me that wealthy people understand this, people that don't know Jesus, but yet, as believers, seemingly, okay, I've got my get out of hell card here. All right, I've got it, but God, no, I'm going to hang on to my finances. I'm going to do it my way, okay? You have to understand that the more you give to God, the more that you trust God, the more that you're going to have. And it may not always equate into financial abundance. Look, there's sometimes I think we don't have anything at the Rutledge's house. But you know what we do have? We have everything that we need. And we go to sleep at night knowing that God is going to take care of us regardless. You know what? Basic interest teaches us this principle. I mentioned our savings last week. I think it was last week. You know, our savings earned about $80 a month last week, just simple interest. Now, that's not a lot of money. It was $1,000 last year, and I don't know about you, but I'll take it. But if I leave that money where it is right now, the little bit that we have, and it doesn't increase anymore, the interest rate, that is, if the interest rate doesn't move any, you know, if it doesn't compound, you know, in 10 years, that'll be $10,000. I'll take that. $10,000 more than I had 10 years ago, I'll take that. I will. Basic interest, compounding interest, teaches us this very principle. It does. Basic mathematics. The more you sow, the more you reap. The next principle is this. The time to start planting is now. It's now. It all starts with a seed. Nothing happens until that seed is planted, but the time to start planting is now. Don't wait for a better time. The sooner the better. I talk to people all the time that say, hey, one of these days I'm going to serve the Lord. One of these days when my finances, when I get to this certain economic level, okay, I'm going to begin giving to the Lord. I am. You know what happens? One of these days is none of these days. Just is. The point is you don't wait for things to get better. You start planting now. Because the sooner you plant, the sooner you're going to harvest. Remember, there's a delay in harvest, okay? The sooner you plant, the sooner you're going to harvest. And it will grow as you plant. It will. You have to trust the Lord in that. And I mentioned this in every single message in this series on financial fitness. The law of compounding interest is the single most powerful force in this universe. It just is. It just is. It's a mathematical law. All right, you start saving as a young person and it multiplies. In fact, I mentioned this a while back. I'm just going to mention it again. At 25 years old, a young person saves $100 a month. Do you know what that is by the time he reaches 65 years old? $1.2 million. Simple interest. That's it. Simple interest. Dave Ramsey says this, you don't have to retire broke. You don't. You don't. But the sooner you start, The sooner you start planting those seeds, the sooner you're going to start harvesting. Solomon makes this clear in Ecclesiastes 11:4. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. You'll never do anything. You won't. If you watch every cloud that comes around, you're never going to harvest. You aren't. Why does he bring this to our attention? Because perfection paralyzes potential. Paralysis of analysis will stop you dead in your track. Procrastination prohibits progress. Procrastination prolongs provisions that you and your family need. It does. If you wait on perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. So whatever you're going to do, start doing it now. And you're asking me, in this recession, when the ends barely meet or they're not meeting? Yeah, in this recession. In this recession. Because now is when you need the help. Now is when you need God to show up in your life, okay? Start planning now. God didn't tell me to wait till the recession was over to start this church 18 months ago. In fact, I was ridiculed because we're going into a recession, Brad. Don't you know how silly that is? Do you know what God said to me? He said, my economic plans never line up with your local, state, and federal economy. It never will. It never will. He said, we're not participating in the recession, Brad. We aren't. And he made this loud and clear to me. He said, this is how I operate in 2 Corinthians 9:10. For God, who gives seed to the farmer to plant, and later on good crops and a harvest to eat, will give you more and more seed to plant and will make it grow so that you can give more and more fruit from your harvest away. And that's what we're doing here. We're giving away the good news of Jesus Christ. We are. You and I are to be thinking like this every single day, everywhere we go. In my thoughts, I ought to be saying, what seeds am I going to plant today? Is it going to be seeds of love? Is it going to be seeds of mercy? Is it going to be seeds of grace? Is it going to be seeds of forgiveness? Is it going to be seeds of money? Whatever it is, how can I plant in other people's lives today? How can I do it? You get up every single day and I just make up my mind, I'm going to be a farmer. I'm going to be a farmer at church, the grocery store, on my job, at work, at school, wherever, okay? I'm going to plant good seeds everywhere because if I plant them, some of them are going to come up and produce exponentially. They are. Look around this room. Look around this church. We planted a seed. 2 people, Brad and Renee. We're averaging 110. We've got about 150 involved. That's the exponential potential of a seed, an idea, a dream. It is. That verse in 2 Corinthians 9:10, it's a promise about being generous with money, but it applies to every area of your life. It applies to investing, everything. The more you give away, the more you're going to get back. This is the principle of sowing and reaping. I will reap what I sow, and so will you. You will. And I want to share this thought with you too, that's in 1 Corinthians 9:11. All right, it says, reaping a material harvest is appropriate if we have spiritual seed among you. He's making the point here very loud, very clearly, that I'm going to reap the benefit of talking to people about Jesus and inviting people to Hope Church. Share your story with somebody. The biggest Christian holiday of the year is coming up in 2 weeks. Invite somebody. You might just change the trajectory of their life. You might. The last principle of sowing and reaping. To reap the harvest, I must be patient and not give up. I know that you have picked up on the fact that I've talked throughout this message about commitment and about consistency. And that is so important. Why? Because remember, there's always a delay Okay, there's a delay in sowing and reaping. You plant one season, you harvest another. But also, don't give up. Jesus said it like this, and let me walk you through this. Come with me here. In Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 26, he said, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground night and day, whether he sleeps or whether he gets up and gets about. The seed sprouts and grows, though he doesn't know how. He doesn't understand it. All by itself, it produces grain. First the stalk, then the head comes out, and then the full kernel of the head, which is the fruit." Okay? Regardless, okay, God's taking care of you. The man's planted, and whether he's doing anything or not, God's at work here, okay? He's saying the results will come. That's just what this verse is about. It will come, but it's not going to come instantly. He says it will come slowly. He says it will come systematically, and it will come as part of the process, okay? I don't have time to unpack all the meaning of this verse, but this is why we must be committed and we must be consistent as well, practicing patience and all the while learning contentment. If we don't get the principle of contentment from 2 weeks ago, you can throw all these other principles away. They won't work. They won't. We have got to be content and know that God has our back, that He's working. Even when we don't see it, He's working. Look at Galatians 6:9. He tells us, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up." Circle that word "will" there. We will reap a harvest. That's a promise. That's a promise of God. He doesn't say we might. We might reap a harvest at the right time if we don't give up. No, He says we will, okay? We have to hang in there and hang on. And while you're waiting, God is working. And as your pastor, I feel like I have to say this, okay? Some of you have to forget about last year's crop failure. You do. You've got to forget, okay, you didn't sow last year. You know what? There's nothing you can do about that. The past is past. It is. Many of you, you've had crop failure for many years. I have. I've been in that situation. I've wasted a lot of years, and so have you at times. I've wasted a lot of words, a lot of relationships, a lot of money. And you know what? You can't change any of that. You know what we have to do? We have to learn to live with the consequences of our failures. And you know how you do that? You learn from your failures. You're not a failure if you learn from them. You've just discovered 10,000 ways it didn't work, okay? That's learning, okay? It is. But what you've got to do is start focusing on the long-term harvest in life, okay? Not the short-term pleasure. Because delayed gratification is a killer in our society today. We want it instantly. And these principles are not instant. They aren't. They're not going to happen in 24 hours, 2 months, or 3 months. They may not happen in 6 months. They happen with consistency and commitment and contentment. They do. It takes time. How much time? God determines that, along with our heart attitude and our motives. That's important. We have to go back to being cheerful with our finances. We have to come back to being trusting where our finances are concerned. And some of you didn't get into this financial shape overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. You just aren't, okay? It took us years to get in the mess that some of us are in. It's going to take a little while to reverse that. But it is doable if we learn commitment and consistency and we apply these principles, okay? And maybe you know what? You've made the commitment and you say, well, I'm not seeing any results yet. Don't grow weary, for you will reap a harvest if you don't give up. You will. Your finances will turn around. They will. You've got to focus on the long term, not short gains, all right? Some of you, your finances bring you to tears. You don't know how you're going to make it. We aren't making it. In fact, we're worse off in this recession, and the recession is not going to turn around. It's not. It's going to be here for a while. But you know what? You can recession-proof your finances. You can. With faith, trusting God, putting these principles into play in your life, it'll happen. You will reap the harvest if you don't give up. Don't quit before the miracle happens. Let me leave you with the same verse that I left you with last week, and I put it on your outline as I promised. Psalms 126, verse 5 and 6. Those who plant in tears will harvest with shouts of joy.